Right?
Yeah. So his objection here is kind of we have bad terminology at times. Where especially for presuppositionalists, we always say, oh, that's just your opinion. What is an objective, standard for telling the truth? And so we tend to want to kind of cut off the knees of any other objection, and rightfully so, because we do ultimately believe it, of having the law take the place, or convention of society, or whatever the grand poobah says, and so his grounding it in this valuer stance doesn't undermine that. It makes a clarification more possible by saying, okay, we're looking for a human independent value, because anything else is just subjective, and we can go round and round of
And
whether
relative, and therefore,
right. Chocolate and vanilla ice cream arguments are just the same as should we kill the unborn.
Right.
And so if we have,
or kill our neighbor.
Yeah. If we have this argument of having a person independent, then we remove it to okay, does the universe have meaning? And so we want to avoid that by saying value only comes from a valuer. And ultimately, the biggest valuer should be God, because he's different from us, but at the same time, he's relational, and we see that in the idea of the Trinity. God doesn't need to learn love, because he's exhibited love from eternity past, because he's been in a relational, loving relationship with the triune beings of God, and so.
Persons.
I'm sorry, in the persons of God, and in the one being, and we should also understand that being creator, he is able to infuse into us a desire to be relational, to find meaning, and that him communicating his meaning, his what he values, is the point of the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
Love the Lord your God and love your neighbor as yourself. These are two greatest commandments. They're both relational. They're both relational.
Wow.
And so that's what we should desire, because that's what our Creator made us to be. And so there we're the most happiest we should be. And we're the most happiest too once we get over our human dependent view and focus on the nature and value that Christ gives to us with a new heart, replacing the heart of stone, giving us a heart of flesh, and coming to have the proper relational aspect within the body of Christ. And so that's...
And I really like what he says here, and so I'll repeat it here. He says, God has designed us so that we function properly only when we love the things he loves and hate the things he hates.
Right.
We're made to value the things he values. We flourish when our preferences align with his.
Right. Yeah.
That is so really rich.
Yeah.
It's really rich.
Yeah. When we're told that we're made in the image of God, it means that we're the messengers of him. We go out into the world, and every action that we take is a special action. Every relationship that we have, every desire that we have over the creation, we are reflecting who God is to all creation around us, including ourselves. And so we should value each other, not because there are those people, but that in a proper understanding of the relationship of God, we're all image bearers of Christ, of God, and so we should see each other as mouthpieces for God, even if we're spewing hatred towards him, because we're still made in his image to carry out his message. And that's where kind of Romans 1 comes into of suppressing the truth and unrighteousness. There's still an understanding that that people have a belief in God because their actions, like the nihilist here, trying to find meaning, or try to put forth their own meaning, so they don't fall into what would be the logical progression of their worldview. And so that's what Genesis 1 tells us, and that's what Romans 1 goes on to tell us. And ultimately, we come into the the proper role once we submit ourselves to Christ and come under the full image-bearing weight and be the messengers both of his image and then also of his message of salvation.
And it has to do with our ability to relate. I mean, relationship is huge with regard to, being created in the image of God. We can relate to one another. We can relate to God, right? We are moral beings, in terms of being in the image of God. And so it's a complex of things here that this image has to do with. And that's the way God has made us. And therefore, as he says here, we flourish when our preferences align with his.
All right. So we've destroyed atheism, or at least
we've shown that they're not
atheists.
skeptical enough, right?
So,
at least that's what Dr. Mitch Stokes has shown. Right?
And so, when Christians are called hypocrites, we rightfully say yes, because we are not valuing the things that God values. We're definitely not valuing the things that we're telling other people to value. So we should live consistent lives, and that should give us an encouragement to strive day by day, picking up our cross daily and following after God and conforming ourselves into the image of Christ, because that way we're living more consistently, which falls in line with loving God more, valuing the things that he values, and then the world will see through our love, through our understanding of our place, and through the message of the gospel in our own lives and from our lips that God ultimately desires that from us, that relationship. And so I don't know what more to say about it, but it was a good book.
Yeah.
I think going through it was definitely a right pick for us, and hopefully you found value in this, because that was kind of the point of the show was to say, here's a book that you might run across Barnes and Nobles if they're still open, or on Amazon, and say, oh, that might be an interesting book, and not pick it up for whatever reason. And so hopefully us breaking it down and listening to Tony a lot more, it can help you realize that there are a lot of good theology and philosophy books out there that can help you in your walk into answering not just apologetic questions, but just how to be relational to each other in the church, or how to just carry forth God's message more with confidence. And so hopefully this book was a benefit to you.